you click.
There we go.
All right. Welcome in everyone to the Oregon Postgame live show here on the Oregon Channel of What's College Football. I think people thought I wasn't going to show up, but no. I mean, we all had a little technical issues tonight, like trying to get out of the stadium from Lubbock. So, but we have a lot to get into. How are you guys doing tonight, Sean, Derek?
Good, man. Yeah, good, man.
A little less heart attack feeling.
Now, yeah, a little less heart attack, but a couple, about an hour and a half to calm down now. So,
yeah, I agree. I'm going to play with my audio because obviously I'm not on my normal one. So let me do one other test here. You guys take it away for a second and discuss, because obviously there's a lot to discuss on it. See if I can get this thing working correctly on my end.
Yeah, no problem. I got you. Sure, but yeah, I know Sean and I, we were texting back and forth throughout the game, and we were just kind of discussing how hard it is being an Oregon fan, man. I mean, they really take years of your life.
yeah, I mean, it really is kind of tough to be an Oregon fan. It's like games like this where we feel like we go in 1 week against an FBS opponent to the next week where it's a Power 5 opponent that just feel like we should just dominate the next week, and we don't. But I feel like that really all comes down to, like, we definitely just beat ourselves. Like, the second half was definitely a little less sloppier, but that first half was really, really sloppy. As far as penalties go, like having 9 for 99 yards, and at the end of the game having 12 for, you probably know, Derek, probably about 115 yards.
What were we talking about?
Penalties?
Yeah, we had 14 for 124.
There we go. That's what would have lost us that game if not for that Tyler Shook interception and Bossa returning it to the house.
Yeah, man, it felt like, I know Dan Lanning had kind of mentioned it at halftime, if any of you guys were able to catch his quick little interview there, but he kind of talked about how it seemed like Oregon was shooting themselves in the foot the entire game, and that seemed to be true. We would, it's not like we struggled to move the ball, I wouldn't say. What did I see? A bullhead, for 359 passing yards. So it's not like we were stagnant. It's just, it kind of felt like we'd be driving, and then all of a sudden we'd have, a string of penalties that really push us back, and then it becomes really tough to score and sustain drives on. So it was really nice to see in the second half that they were able to kind of turn that around and be a little more consistent on both sides of the ball.
Well, yeah, that kind of helped too, and I feel like what sucked was, like, we were running the ball down their throats, and I kind of mentioned this over text as we were running, or in the chat, that we were running the ball down their throats in the first half. Second half, we come out, 4th and 1, try to do a little quarterback dive, second, third down, try to do a little halfback dive up the middle. You got to expect Tech's going to expect on a 4th and less than a foot that's going to be a quarterback dive at that point. Like, if you're going to have the balls to go for that on 4th and inches, then you got to run something better, in my opinion, than just a quarterback sneak.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking of quarterbacks, I think it's one thing that needs to be addressed right away is Oregon's QB containment, or I should say their lack thereof, because that was absolutely atrocious. We just watched Tyler Shook absolutely eating our linebacking core alive, consistently getting into that second and third level, making players miss. I think, what did I see? He had over 100 rush yards himself. He had more design carries than our entire running back room had combined. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. The Tyler Shook over and over again kind of reminded me a lot of how I was feeling during that Oregon State game last year when they ran it down our throats 18 times in a row. And there was shit, we couldn't stop it.
Is this
and
this seeming better?
too,
What was that, Ben?
Is this audio better for you guys now?
yeah, you're good. For me, it's good.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure. So if there's anything funky going on, let me know. I don't use this laptop anymore, so all the settings are like acting up on me.
But like for me, like I pointed out that we were running a lot of 4x1 sets, 2 high safeties, 4 DBs. You know, running it 23 times for 102 rush yards. At that point, like you don't have that quarterback, the quarterback in order to kind of contain it.
Yeah, they seemed very ill prepared for that because there were times when they were about to run play and I was watching because, again, I was there and I was like, he's just going to run it. And then he'd run it and get a first down again. And I was texting you guys. I said, Josh LaPoy was on the sideline throwing just a tantrum at the defense most of the game, like just tearing them apart for good reason because they weren't containing. They weren't getting to Shuck. I think the only times he probably was happy was after the fumble in the red zone that Chuck did, and I couldn't see him because he was on the other side of the field. And then after the pick 6 at the end of the game, and he came over and he was just smiling with the guys like, that's what I want to see. Pressure, make them make a bad decision, and get a takeaway. But other than that, he was just tearing those poor guys apart. They are not going to have a fun week of practice, I'm sure, this week.
Well, it's like I said, too, like I really enjoyed like the refs during the game, like sideline warning. Tosh is right there yelling at him on the field, not caring if he gets that sideline warning. Like, you know, it's a matter of like you see that defense that you know is so much better than what you're playing at today, especially with a lot of those defensive PIs. Like our cornerbacks are so much better than that. Or even that end of the game, the unnecessary roughness against Shuck. Like, we're so much better than that. Like, just because you're tired, you're exhausted. Tech has the same type of offense we do, you know, where we can run up-tempo, keep going. Even when you're like that, you can't make those dumb mistakes. That's what ruins a game for you.
Yeah, those pass interferences were killers because the first one was like right in front of me at like the 30, 35-yard line. And I mean, he literally just like threw himself into the receiver. I was like, holy crap. And then 2 or 3 more really bad ones. I'm like, they can just throw it 30 yards down the field knowing that they're probably going to get an interference call. I mean, at this point.
It was that first Kyrie Jackson, the one that you're referring to, Ben, that happened right in front of you, where he just plowed into dude downfield. That came on a 3rd and 18. It was that very moment when that pass interference happened that I knew where that drive was going. I mean, as Oregon fans, we've lived the same game over. It feels like 100 times. You know, it's just absolutely shooting themselves in the foot. You cannot have that on 3rd and 18. And it's not like it was a questionable call by any sense. I mean, this man straight up just plowed through him on a jump ball that really, I mean, he wasn't catching that ball. I'm sorry, you know, but the fact that it was close enough and just went right through him, and then he wants to look at the ref like, "Are you kidding me?" That's
unacceptable. Like, hey, he grabbed my face mask, but I'm like, dude, you launched into him. You literally threw the side of your body into the receiver. That was
right. And hand fighting with a little inadvertent face mask. That's one thing. You know, that's something that's easy to miss. What's not easy to miss is you pushing dude 6 yards back downfield because you hit him in midair.
Launching yourself into the air at him. Yeah, you can't. No one can miss that. And oh man, yeah, because also I was near this, right next to one of the stretches of the student sections. Oh yeah, they were giving hell the whole game. You can only imagine all of the immediate taunting. But at least we're in the good duck crowd. But
well, even at that, you know, we had 3 pass interference calls in the game.
Yep, 3 PIs.
Yeah, even the other 2, like it was just more or less those PIs that you get because you don't turn your head around to look where the ball's at. Like,
oh, they were bad. They were easy calls. Those are easy pass interference calls. They didn't look back exactly. They grabbed the guy. They threw themselves into the guy for no reason. It was, defensively. I don't know what the game plan was today. I don't know what they thought they were going to see, or is that what they actually trained for? Because even they had to take a timeout because guys weren't getting off the field. They weren't hustling.
We got a 12-man on the field penalty too. With that,
they were 12 men on the field penalty. That's
I will say they probably were tired because Tech was taking a lot of time on their drives, like 15 plays and stuff. But I mean, you got to hustle. I mean, absolutely have to hustle. But it seemed like they were just like worn out or something. I don't know what the problem was, but.
Well, and really that shouldn't come as a surprise. We know what Tech's offense looks like. They're a tempo-based offense for the vast majority of it, and they definitely push it when they see substitutions happening. And then at one, I'm thinking of the 112th man on the field. It was technically probably like 15 men on the field, and they were trying to do a mass substitution and got caught with, bodies on the sideline. It wasn't even close. You know what I'm saying? There was no type of urgency.
It was at least 4 guys.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like the little things like that Texas Tech is a great opponent, as we saw today. We very well could have lost that game, but if you're making these same type of mistakes against like a USC caliber or a UW caliber, even a Oregon State caliber, if you will, it's not going to end well. Tech, they exploited it the best they could, and they did a good job of it, and they melted down. But when we get to these higher caliber opponents, it's not going to end up like this if we keep playing, having 14 penalties for 124 yards.
I actually thought it was going to be in the 130 to 140 range, actually. So it was a lot. It was a lot. I think Sean froze.
Well, and then I think it just felt like so much more just because last week, I think, what was it, guys? Did we have 2 total last week? 2 total penalties for something like 13 yards or something? Does that sound right?
I think it was 2 for 20. But
2 for 12. Okay, sure. Even 2 for 20. It's just such a gaping difference between what we saw penalty-wise the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and 2 for 20. Yeah, you're like, hey, everyone's going to have a couple penalties in a game. That's even if it's not your fault. It could just be one where you got a bad call. It's going to happen, but this was just. Josh Connerly had. We're talking defense right now, but 3 false starts on Josh Connerly. Yeah. I don't know what was going on there.
No, you were at the stadium. Was it really loud there, Ben?
It really didn't seem like it. Now on the field level itself, maybe so, but it wasn't like that bad, really. So I was really surprised that he had so much like issue for some reason.
Yeah, and I think he may have been. What did we have? 1 additional false start, so he had 75% of our false starts today on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, so
2 of them were like pretty close together, and then there was like one in the late third quarter again. I was like, another one? Come on! I was like, it was just one of those things because he's a really talented guy. I know it's his first year fully starting.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's his first real road game, like as a start. Maybe it kind of threw him off, and it wasn't hot. Everyone thought the heat might play a bad role for us, really, but really it wasn't that hot. It was warm, obviously, but it had a breeze in the stadium. On the field, it's probably a little hotter, but being 9 rows up, I think I could probably tell it was not too bad. So it's not like they were overheated, and we didn't see anyone go down with like cramps or anything that I'm aware of that I can recall.
I was actually going to bring that up because I know we talked about that Tuesday, how we thought that could have been an issue that played into, just the game going along and on the injury front of it. But, I'm kind of surprised we didn't see a lot of like cramp. I don't think we saw any cramping, just in terms of injuries. Both teams got out of here pretty healthy today.
Well, I think the only injuries we really saw were on Tech, right?
Yeah, some minor injuries, I believe. I don't believe we saw anything serious. I think we got it through scathe-free.
Yeah, Shuck might be feeling it tomorrow. just they just kept running him, and I'm like, I get it, it's effective, but you're going to get your quarterback killed.
That unnecessary roughness call too was really a shot to the ribs. Like he kind of got it gingerly there. Like I wasn't sure if he was actually going to be in the next play because of that shot or not.
Yeah, there was one where he got up and he was a little kind of slow walking around. I was like, uh-oh, that's not good for Tech. But, well, and that's like Jason says here, some Texas Tech guys are cramping. Well, that's even more impressive than for Oregon because that's what all the Tech fans were saying. They're like, we thought this would be affecting Oregon, not, more than it obviously was because it didn't seem to be affecting them at all. But again, it wasn't really a hot day. It wasn't humid. It was pretty decent. So I don't think the weather played any part in it today.
Well, a lot with the containment too is, like I was saying, we were playing 4-by-1. We get to guys like a Caleb Williams or a Shadur, in a couple weeks. You want to play a 4-down lineman, 1 linebacker set. We're going to get run on like that all day long.
They're going to have to spy at least. And you'd hate to remove a guy from coverage for it, but you're going to have to probably spy. Like there were some nice blitz packages put into this game where guys came off the edge or even late through the middle to get to Shuck. And they still missed a few times, but they got him enough and rattled him enough where it started to finally do it. But they still moved the ball on us, and it was like it was stressful in the stadium. As soon as it was like, yay, we're ahead. Okay, now we're losing again. Yeah, we're in the lead. Now we're losing again, and time is ticking.
Well, I'm sure me and Derek too can just be kind of testify to that, sitting at home, just like, okay, this is just as fucking stressful.
The only difference is I was probably a little more comfy.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but yeah, it was. I mean, you have to deal with the whole little atmosphere of the thing. So I'm actually looking forward to going back and seeing what the recording of the game looks like to see. So defensively, obviously, there's some stuff that needs to be corrected and worked on because, yeah, we can't have that happening all the time. There's, I don't know. Please try to explain to me what was that offense they were running today.
I know just watching Dan Lanning's like little pressers earlier in the week that he talked about how, like their bunch formation is going to give Oregon some fits. And it did. We saw them, then they'd stack their receivers. I mean, sometimes we'd see them 3-4 deep, but typically you see 3 stacked, 3 bunched on a sideline. And I noticed, in one particular drive, we saw Mace Funa was just, he was sitting over there the entire time, obviously, just because they're overloading one side. And then you leave one backer up the middle, like you had mentioned, Sean. And then, send those guys deep, clear that space. And all of a sudden, Tyler Shuck makes a one-man miss, and he gouges us for, what was his
20
long
yards?
Yeah, I think he had a long run to like 54 or something like that at one point.
That first one that set up that touchdown right after we punted the ball in our first series.
You're right. Yep, absolutely. That was his big run right away, wasn't it?
It was, like at least 35 to 40 yards, something like that.
Yeah, but I think just that bunch formation was really giving Oregon the fits. It spread out that defense, that linebacking core. I don't think they were quite prepared for it. We didn't have a man up the middle who, I guess, I don't want to sound bad, but like was effective in stopping the run game. He was a pretty non-factor for the most part. So I don't know.
I kind of feel like with Mace too, they were kind of relying him more on coverage this game when he's not really a coverage linebacker. He is more of that stop the run type of linebacker, plug the hole, get to the quarterback type. He can cover if he needs to, but it's the short passes, it's the slant passes. It's not, okay, send him out wide with the receiver down the field a little bit.
No, and it doesn't help either when he does get put into pass coverage and he has to guard a 6'9" athletic tight end who moves like no other. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, so excuse me for that, Tech fans. But that man, he was an athletic ass tight end, and we really struggled with that too when they did decide to use him in the pass game.
Something Tharp was his name. I remember that because I was sitting here like, I may be 6'7", but like you cannot teach a tight end who is 6'9" really anything at that point. Like that dude, you throw that high point ball, like it don't matter. He's gonna snag that ball out the air. Like I will give it to that guy. He's athletic. We didn't even have a linebacker who could really match up well against him anyways, because you can't teach 6'9", just like they said.
That's a fact. Absolutely.
I do say I was as watching the Oregon offense at very first too. For the Oregon offense, I think we have a better understanding of who Will Stein is and what he wants, and it's a passing offense. We saw that with with Portland State, because at the end they were running the ball to try to balance out the stats. And in this game, they started running the ball a little bit, and then they got immediately away from it for whatever reason. But I mean, there was I should have asked. I should have tried to count them. How many times was it just a screen, check down, swing, run, wheel route type pass that he had to check down to because of text coverage, but it was just, it was there. There's a swing route. There's a little wheel. There's a screen. I was like, if I see one more screen pass, I'm going to lose my mind for a while there. I mean, it was getting yardage, but
I'm sorry, I'm a Pats fan, but seeing that pisses me off because it reminds me of Matt Patricia of last year, but it's like that was kind of the same thing with them last year. But I feel like, we were running that ball really well at first. We were running up the middle. We were doing the jet sweep, the tosses, the little RPO type thing, handoffs, things like that. And then in the second half, we just went to, okay, if we're going to run the ball, we're going to just try and plug it up the middle. We're not going to try to go to the outside. And then when we try to go to the outside, it's like, okay, well, now we know what you're trying to do. You're going to run the ball to the outside.
Yeah, they did deploy a few of the pitch plays pretty nicely. Those were somewhat effective.
Except for the biggest one of the game.
Yeah, except for I think I just muted myself accidentally. That's it. That's why I need to go back and rewatch it too, because obviously when you're watching it in person, it's a lot harder to be able to grasp what everyone is doing on the field at once, because you don't have that nice little upper view. But I mean, it's obvious he wants a passing offense. And that's fine. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I just was like, I don't understand what we're doing. And Bo missed at least 4 open receivers over the middle. Not because of bad throws, because he chose to make a harder read. He chose to throw to Franklin or Johnson on the outside instead of a guy literally in the middle of the field, sitting there or streaking across the middle and no defender within 5 yards of him. And I was like, why? Why are we doing this? He needs to. I think they're going to have to work on maybe his eyes again in this new little playbook, because he was missing guys a lot.
I mean, I will say, when you go back and watch the broadcast, there's one early in the game where Troy Franklin, it's a near miss on the sideline. You'll see that one hits off his arm. That hits Troy Franklin's forearm. So that in itself, I know the commentators had kind of mentioned something like, the receiver should have helped Bo a little bit, but Bo with the miss. And I'm like, in my head, if you put the ball right here, that's not a Bo miss. I mean, that's on Troy. And Troy actually had another drop later in the game too. But it's I think Bo, he got a little, when he was under duress, he did look very uncomfortable, especially early in the game. From before he started to use his legs, which we kind of saw him start to do in the second half a little more, which was, highly effective. And I'm kind of glad, I am glad that he's not running at will all game long, kind of preserve the legs for when he needs to. But yeah, once Bo decided to use those legs, it was an entirely different game. I think the biggest play of the game arguably was, I have it written down, so where's that 3rd and 11 about midfield? I know you know exactly which drive I'm talking about. And, he kind of gets hit initially, stumbles a little bit, gets his balance again about 7 yards deep, and, falls forward for about another 5 in the first down, and that drive ended up leading to an Oregon touchdown, and, the rest was history. But if Bo didn't scramble out the pocket, escape the pressure, keep himself up, and make that pretty immaculate run there, I think we're having a very different conversation right now.
Well, and I feel like, too, this year when he is running, now that we actually see it, he is playing it smarter. He is giving himself up. He's not taking that contact this time like he was last year when he was running, because he knows he needs to preserve himself. He knew at the end of the season last year that there's so much more he could have done if he would have preserved himself a little bit. And he knows, hey, that Washington game was probably on me. So he's trying to be smarter with his running this year than he was last year.
And they could be saving him a little bit for more of actual conference play, like figuring we don't need you for these games to do those types of things. But then, in the third quarter, that's when he started running. Like all of a sudden he was like, screw this. And I was like, there we go. But all the comments of the fans and myself was, he needs to learn how to slide. He just like falls forward like awkwardly. And I'm like, what was that? Because it almost looks like maybe he hurt himself. I'm like, what was that? He did it multiple times. I was like, yeah, you got to work on that slide, Bo.
There were a couple slides that he did just fine, but then the others, it's like, all right, I'm going to just barrel roll forward and get myself up.
I saw one in midfield where he stuck his knee in the turf and did a little barrel roll. And I'm like, all right, Bo. All right, buddy.
It could be he's afraid of sliding because he's afraid maybe he's going to get his ankle caught, like the bottom of his foot caught in the turf and like put pressure on his ankle. Who knows? It could be different things. This is an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know. You guys said Chris Hudson, he wasn't there. That you guys said he wasn't on the travel squad. And obviously we didn't see him in the game that I'm aware of, and I didn't see him on the sideline anywhere. So,
yeah, in terms of where Chris Hudson is, that kind of seems to be the question today. Just based off what the Oregon beat reporters and stuff have kind of been tweeting throughout the day, little articles that have been released, it kind of seems like no one really knows what's going on with Chris Hudson. I believe it was James Crepea kind of had mentioned earlier in the week that he was back at practice this week, but then we get here and from what I'm hearing, nobody saw him on the sidelines. Like the Justin Jacobs of the world, he was there. Obviously not dressed for the game, but he was on the travel squad. He was with the team, and that's not the case for Chris Hudson, at least to this knowledge. So, yeah, I don't know. That kind of seems like a little developing story here as to where he is, what's been going on, and what his role is going to look like with the team going forward, if there is a role. I mean, I'm not trying to speculate by any stretch, so we'll wait and see what happens. But yeah, we're not really sure. It doesn't seem like anyone's really sure. And I don't believe, as of the post-game pressers, anyone has addressed it with Coach Lanning. So I'm sure we'll hear something about it. It's a question I have a feeling that somebody will bring up in his Tuesday presser, but we'll find out.
I'm looking it up right now, too, to see if I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I think maybe he does feel like he's getting pushed out of the receiver room.
I feel like we have so much wide receiver depth, like,
I don't know. It is weird because he was one of the ones that stuck around.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
He's just kind of like a ghost.
But then again, you know how Oregon is with their releasing the injuries and that type of deal. So for all we know, maybe it's just per se an example. Maybe it's like an ankle injury that's kind of been nagging them throughout the week, and they say, you know what, depth is a strength of ours. Let's let this thing fully heal up, get into conference play healthy. So, at this point, we really have no idea. I hope for the best, and I hope he is back with the team. He is. We've seen it in previous seasons. He can definitely be an asset, and, more wide receiver depth is going to do nothing but benefit the team.
And it was when we were texting before the game, and you guys were talking about that, and then I was like, oh, I do see Whittington on the field, so that's good, warming up with the running backs and stuff. So I was like, that's good.
Yeah, it was nice to see him back this week too, and in his few runs, he did look quite explosive. So.
Yeah, I mean, and by all means, full credit to Tech. They came out blazing on defense because of that. I think Wyoming lost. Like we said, did they overlook Wyoming because of Oregon, or now are they just really hot because of that? Because again, there's a big difference between starting 1-1 and started 0-2. There's a big so hats off to Tech and what they were doing, because they contained, after the first couple drives, they contained Oregon's receivers fairly well. Like, actually, that's why they had to do so many checkdowns a lot, because there was not a lot of deep shots available. There was a couple here and there maybe you could have taken, but Bo felt it wasn't worth it. So
no, and like, I know you had kind of mentioned earlier how we were seeing a lot of the screen game, a lot of the short passing game, and I have a theory that they were trying to establish this short pass game. Those safeties were starting to suck in a little bit, and we saw, was it the second drive right away when that 72-yard bomb to Troy, it really opened that up. But I think what we saw as the game went on is their safeties stayed pretty pat at the end. They didn't want to get beat up top. They were more than willing to let their linebackers, they have a very athletic linebacking core, and they're more than willing to kind of let those guys do their thing. And I'd say overall, the score didn't necessarily reflect it in their favor, but I would say they were quite effective in doing what they were doing.
Anything down there, Sean, on Chris Hudson potentially?
I'm still researching right now.
Okay. Yeah, see if let us know, Dylan, if you find something, because I know Lanning, probably won't say anything openly about it.
Lanning is not one to talk about injuries either, unless it comes to about game time. And somebody as important as Chris Hudson, who has been over the last couple seasons, is somebody that I feel like Lanning should address, because he has been that important. But it's also, like you were saying, he could be feeling like he's just getting pushed out of the wide receiver room at this point with the depth we have.
I mean, it's not like we haven't seen other wide receivers transfer out over the last couple of years or anything.
Or leave mid-season. I won't mention any names, but we've played this song before. And Ben, I know you brought up you didn't know what we were talking about, how if Tech overlooked Wyoming. Did you happen to catch the Wyoming versus Portland State score today?
No, I did not. Tomorrow is my recap day completely for every game, because of course I've been
Yeah, so obviously, Tech goes to Wyoming, loses a one-score game there. Portland State went to Wyoming today, and it was a 14-point game. I think that in itself tells me everything I need to know that Tech was absolutely...
Wyoming won?
Wyoming won 31-17, yep.
Yeah, that makes it kind of weird, too, is because it's like, okay, so did Tech overlook Wyoming, and then is Wyoming in hangover mode from Tech to Portland State? It's kind of it's hard to keep, a team motivated when you have different levels of competition. For Wyoming, Tech coming to their place was a huge game, just like Tech, Oregon going there was a pretty huge game. And you saw it by the fans. I don't have a photo of it right now. They had literally made just specifically beat Oregon in duck hunt shirts.
I did see it. I did see it on social media a couple times. Well, and the funny thing is, I know, their fan base, I was interacting with them a little bit throughout the week on Twitter and such, and they 100% believe that the whole duck hunt thing was like an original idea to them. Oh, so I swear. Yeah, so, there were a couple Oregon accounts that had screenshotted some of the previous ones from like UW and Arizona, and, whoever else we played. We've seen it 150 times, and kind of screenshotted it and sent it to their fan base. I promise you, absolutely mind blown that was not their original idea.
Yeah, no. I the first one I saw, I was like, oh, that's original. I even kind of laughed at it. I was like, that's original. I was like, come on. We haven't heard that before. Getting duck called in the waiting, from the student section waiting outside to get in, before the game. Like, quack, quack, quack. And I'm like, okay, guys, calm down.
Don't you worry, Ben. We'll see it about 4 more times this year.
Yes. Thinking of that, there was a comment earlier. Yeah, what was the Texas Tech fan heckler level? For the most part, it wasn't too bad. I will say that when it came time, every time they did a penalty, of course, Texas Tech would be chanting, "You can't do that," like against Oregon for the penalties. And then most people, I would say pretty behaved. Of course, there was the rowdy ones, the really vocal ones. There was a couple Oregon fan ones that were really vocal right behind us. Like, I was like, come on, man, come on. So some class. But the only time I saw things get a little out of hand was, I think, right after the pick six at the end. I also saw water bottles starting to get thrown at the Oregon defense. At the Oregon side, they started throwing water bottles. I don't know if they were actually throwing them at Oregon or if they were trying to throw them across the field to throw at Shuck. Because
fair enough.
I'm not sure which way it was supposed to go, but that was about the only time I saw it really get out of hand. And there was this one. I don't want to forget about it. I just left. Oh, Mark, you were in Lubbock? Yeah, I'm staying here tonight. Did you guys see the Tech fans throwing tortillas? I don't know. Did you see that on TV?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That opening kickoff, the end zone was littered with the tortillas.
Oh, yeah. Casper threw one back directly at the student section. He picked it up off the sideline and was like, right back at him.
Well, it sounds like he was just giving it back to him. That's all.
Yeah, because they kept saying, like, that was one of the things they kept saying was, take it back. Or whatever, we would throw it back to them when something bad happened for Tech, or we scored back. Take it back, and they were throwing. And I told you guys before this, I was like, it was a big enough game apparently that A.D. Mullins and Phil Knight were on the sideline. I don't know if they showed them on TV, and I was like, don't you dare try to hit Phil Knight with a tortilla.
Oh, somebody was thinking it. Somebody saw his old head and wanted to stick it right on the back of his head. I promise you, because I know if I'm a Tech fan, I'm looking at Phil Knight, and he's target number one.
Yeah, he was just right there on the sideline. And then he slowly got pushed over as the team moved down the field, and the other players started filtering. And he was just like, oh, I guess I got to move this way now. And just kind of slowly moved towards the end zone out of sight. And I was like, so he must have been up in one of the boxes, I guess, and just came down in like the fourth quarter. Because I was like, is that Phil Knight?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a big game.
Doing some research. Ducks Wire does not know what's going on with Chris Hudson, whether it's injury, personal, whatever. But according to them, he's still on the team. He just hasn't, and he's been at the facilities, but they're not exactly sure kind of what's going on there.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying. I guess for us as fans, I mean, when the beat reporters don't know, the team reporters don't know, there's really no reason for us to speculate just because we're not going to be able to provide any information that those guys can't. So I'm really hoping, because he was back at practice this week, is that it is like a silent injury designation and we're kind of letting him get healthy for going into conference play. I mean, especially with Hawaii coming in this week. If he is trying to rest, there's no reason to rush him back this week either. I mean, I think our wide receiver depth will be all right for Hawaii. But, just heading into conference play when Colorado comes to town in a couple weeks, it'd be nice to have another able and capable wide receiver, even if it is a depth position, Or
returner. I mean, he's fast enough. He could be a returner. We could get, like, Bucky and some of the running back guys out of there. And Bryant was back there, I think, taking some picks too. I mean, depth is always good. So we'll see, I guess. Who knows? It's an unknown for Hudson at this moment. But he stuck around this year instead of leaving like some others did. So I'm hoping that everything's good. It's just, I guess,
unlike Micah Pittman.
Oh yeah. The alien world of night. Love it. As a Texas fan, I have so many traumatic and hilarious memories. What did you think overall? Well, we play in the Pac-12, where the wildest things happen almost on a weekly basis after dark. So yeah, it was. I mean, personally, as now being in Lubbock, it was a good atmosphere. It was. I liked it. Again, especially the weather held up, and I see why it is like that though, because Oregon. They struggled. I mean, realistically, they struggled. This was not anything like I think what we thought it would be. We said it would be a close game, but I don't think we thought it would look as bad as it did in a way.
Ben, I think if we go back to the score predictions, I think there is one person who called this game within 4 points.
I'm gonna have to get to the score predictions because I know one person that didn't win.
I just know one person who did, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, I got to pull those back up. My phone was literally about to die on the way back because I was using GPS. I was like, oh, God, please hold on. But we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But I thought it was a great atmosphere. I thought it was a great atmosphere. And, I mean, again, it just showed tonight with Oregon. It can be a tricky place to play. And we said that was the game circled all offseason of going, oh, boy, that's going to be a weird one. Texas Tech and Oregon and Texas Tech had only played the 2 times before, which I had to Google because I was like, have we played them before? It's like, oh, yeah, 91-92, home and home, and we won both of them. But it's been a long time since the Ducks have been to Lubbock, a long time. And the Ducks have not had the best of luck in Texas lately, playing in Texas.
No, they haven't.
No, we haven't. No.
That's all right. That's a discussion for another day.
And that's it here. A Power 5 road win is a Power 5 road win. All the teams can play. That's
the thing, too. I think a lot of fans were really thinking that we were going to come and blow these dudes out of the water, which, if you look on paper and you look at how they played last week against Wyoming, sure, that's one thing. But the motivation factor is a whole entirely different thing that people aren't thinking about. This is a game that I promise you Tech was looking at on their schedule, and they said, this is the one we want. Obviously, they got their conference games that mean a little bit more too, just in terms of non-conference and what it kind of means for the national spotlight in terms of Texas Tech. It's, it would have been a major win to beat an Oregon program, would have been a great motivational piece for the program going forward, heading into Big 12 play as well. But yeah, they were solid, and I think we kind of understood that was going to happen. So I know some fans are disappointed, but hey, at the end of the day, going into Lubbock and coming out with a win, I'm happy.
Well, and I feel like, too, Shuck was really kind of had this one circled on his calendar from the start of the offseason since he did win the Pac-12 with us in 2020 and then decided to transfer after that. So now going into his 5th year, just like Bo, I feel like he kind of had that one circled, and it was kind of like motivation to kind of like show, why did you want to get rid of me? Why did you choose Anthony Brown over me, essentially, at that point? Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I did not like Shuck at that point, but we go back and look, I probably would have rather had him that season than Anthony, but that's just me.
That's a curious point, and that's one of the others. Like, I know that's been something we talked about as the motivator for Shuck. The only thing is, this isn't the coaching staff that he played for, and most of these players, a lot of these players, weren't even there or know anything about him in the sense of that. So, in a way, yeah, I think it was a little maybe he wanted a little payback, but at the same time, that was Cristobal, and I mean Moorhead and Shuck just did not flourish in that system very well for some reason. But so I don't know, it was probably part of it. But
I know I saw an interview earlier in the week where they kind of asked him if this game meant a little bit more, and obviously he kind of gave that professional answer where he's like, oh, it's another game. At the end he goes, but I really want this one. Yeah, I think even though it might have not have been the Cristobal staff, and I think I just saw a tweet today that there were like 4 players who are on our roster right now that were on the roster when he was here. Currently, so there's been a massive turnover, but I still think when you wear the colors of the university, you put on that jersey, and then I don't know what happened behind closed doors. Obviously, he left, but then you kind of depart that university. You're telling me you don't think it meant a little bit more to win this game today? I think this is one, like I said, he had circled on his calendar. He understood who was coming in, and like you said, it might have not have been the personal piece with Mario himself, but it's still the university. I think it was a personal game for him.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. I mean, I do think it was a factor, but it wasn't Mario and stuff. So yeah, this is a good one too. So just obviously it was a win. A win is a win, even if it's kind of an ugly win. I mean, in the way But what positives did you take away from this game? Sean, let's hear what Sean has. What positives?
I feel like some of the positives for me were definitely that second half. Like, yes, we were shut out offensively in that third quarter, but it's like I was telling Derek, like I played defensive line high school, college level. Like in that first half for me, yes, we were still up going into halftime, but our defensive line kind of gave up a lot, in my opinion. They got stood up a lot. They kind of didn't keep pushing all that often, but as soon as the second half came out, they were definitely fighting a little bit more. Our defense made adjustments to that point where we had that quarterback spy at different points. Our defensive line was able to get pushed back, get a little bit more pressure. Maybe that was just because their offensive line was wearing out. That cornerback play definitely in the second half was a lot better. Bo taking off whenever he needed to. Finally, just like obviously against Portland State, he didn't really need to say, "Well, fuck it, I might do what I want." But when it's a game like this, you kind of have to. So I feel like him kind of getting in that mental state now early in the season before we head into, possibly Colorado. Like, obviously we can't overlook Hawaii, but when we get to Colorado, it's like that could be a top 15 matchup at that point when we get there. So having him in that mindset is really good. The offensive line, second half, I feel like the second half was a lot better than the first half. I do still feel like this was a sloppy win, but there were still quite a few positive takes to come out from this.
That's fair. Derek, what do you think? Because obviously you guys got to watch it. I was having to watch it there, so I need to still analyze it. But I have my own little things. But you guys have a different vantage point of the game as a whole.
Yeah, so I mean, I would have to agree with a lot of this stuff that Sean was saying. I think, although our running back yardage doesn't necessarily reflect it, I do think overall, as a whole, the offensive line did play well. I believe there was only one sack on Bo this entire game. So that's nice, as they do have a very athletic defensive front. I mean, I know that was something that we had mentioned was a key to this week, just kind of seeing how they were able to get to the quarterback and if we were able to protect them or not. I think another positive was definitely Troy Franklin. We did mention earlier in the show he did have a drop in this game, but what I do think he showed is that dude is an elite talent. The man has incredible speed. As we know, not from just this game, but as a whole, his hands are immaculate. But he kind of took over again this game. He had over 100 yards this week and another touchdown. So I really like what I see from Troy going forward as well.
I will say quickly, his touchdown that he did, that one touchdown, that silenced the crowd immediately because they were like, "Oh, whoa, that guy, oh man!" But then they did do a good job on it after that. They did do a pretty decent job on it. But
I feel like at that point too, like it's just more of the fact that okay, we scored first. Mm-hmm. We're going to be even louder. Come back, Troy scores, and it's like, oh, okay. This is going to be a game.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I know it wasn't pretty. I know it wasn't great, but I do have some positives. I do think there are some positive things to take away here. One of them, I'm going to go with, it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but I do like how physical our secondary is. I do not like the stupid penalties. The pass interferences were absolutely remedial, cost us points. I believe 2 out of 3 pass interference drives that were had. But I do like that we're seeing a certain level of physicality in that secondary, and that's something we have not been seeing the past couple of years at all. Actually, it's kind of felt like our secondary has been extremely soft. So it is kind of nice to see that. I really hope they get it shored up and cleaned up. And, it's completely unacceptable, especially to have those PIs called in some of the situations that they were. But I do like the physicality that we kind of saw from the defense. And then as Sean mentioned too, the defensive line, where was that? QB hurries, we out-hurried Tech substantially. There are a number of QB pressures, 4 sacks. I think if we would have said earlier in the week, hey, our D-line can get 4 sacks, every one of us would look at it and go, yep, we'll take that all day, every day. So it was highly encouraging to kind of see them actually getting to the quarterback. And when they weren't, they were forcing him to move outside the pocket, which, might have gouged us with his legs later on. But strictly a point aside, we're getting into the backfield with our defensive front, and that's something highly encouraging going forward because that was one of our most glaring gaps we had coming into this season. So I do think we're trending in the right direction there. I will say the clutchness of the defense is the other positive that I saw in this game. Obviously the first 3 quarters didn't go as we would have liked to see. However, I will say in that fourth quarter, they gave up 3 points to Tech. They managed 2 turnovers, and they played every play like it meant something. So I was highly encouraged to see the team, really step up when it mattered. Even if it's an ugly win, as we saw Kama mention, a win's a win. And, the defense did what they needed to do to walk out without dub. So, I'm going to choose to save my complaints on the defense for the most part. There were some positives for sure.
I think you guys touched upon a lot of it because I do think, in person, even the first half, I was kind of like, our O-line does not look that good in the first half. The second half, they started to be a little better, and that was something we were concerned about was the O-line. The sack on Nix, he actually tried to run up the middle, I think, and he kind of got caught from behind. So it was one of those but it was a loss of 2 or 3 yards, I think it was, something like that. Secondary, yes, Sean, we see you. Spaz. I'm leaving this chat up. But yes, Spaz. The secondary, I do like the aggressiveness, but they've got to be smart. Someone, and I again credit in part to Tech because there was, I think it was the third quarter. Forgive me if I'm wrong. That there was another huge coverage bust where the guy was just open, like 25 yards down the field, like wide open.
On that touchdown pass, our cornerback just got burned.
Yeah, because the safety came over and looked at him afterwards, goes, "What are you doing?" Or whatever, no one's communicating on the back end that well. And again, it's a lot of newer faces. So I think that the communication will come. But I do agree the defense finally especially in the fourth quarter. And again, that's when I told you, that was when, the third time I told you that the boy is hot. That was when he lit into those D linemen specifically, about do your job, basically. I was surprised he didn't do the Mario headset smash. That's
me too.
That's how hard he was getting. I mean, he was just screaming at them. And then all of a sudden, you started seeing much more pressure. So I do think that there's positives in that. And the offense, the offense did what they needed to do. Obviously, they shot themselves in the foot a lot. They turned it over on downs at one time.
That was something I had talked about of why run it 3 different times straight up the middle when the other 2 times it didn't work.
I kind of understand that. I guess in the positive sense of what took it out of is the team didn't quit. Because it looked dire there for a little bit, when Tech went up 30-28, I think it was. And I was like, we have 4.5 minutes left or something. I was like, oh boy. And we have not been doing very well offensively. So I was like, uh-oh.
Well, I know there was a point in our group chat when we were texting throughout the game, and we mentioned we could feel the momentum swing, and it was at that very moment. And I know we were all feeling that same fucking thickness in your chest. It was, we've lived this game too many times before, and it was slipping. But like you said, they never quit, and we're going to need that going forward into conference play, that resiliency going forward. We're going to see that again.
Oh, yeah. Again, it was a sloppy win, that's for sure. So they've got to get some of this fixed, cleaned up. The drop balls, yes. Missed tackles and penalties, yes. Those were definitely issues, Raymond. And like it says here, it helps. Yes. It hurt. Some of the plays were very head scratching. That's why I want to go back and look at the actual like broadcast of it to get a different view of it, because I bet there were some like really confusing looks, just like, what are you doing?
Well, it's
You'll
like
see.
something I noticed a lot on broadcast too was like a lot of the runs, a lot of shucks runs were just our defensive linemen just not willing to keep up on an offensive lineman. Just let the offensive lineman throw me to the side. Offensive lineman second level. Shuck gets 10, 15 yards at that point. Like
He was killing us. He was killing us for a while there. Like,
and even on Brooks runs where we couldn't tackle him, it's like you're allowing that offensive line to get to the second level.
Well, it just becomes so much harder when they're running these bunch formations and we have one linebacker sitting in the middle of the field. So then you have a tight end who comes over and clears him out, and who do you have left? All of a sudden you have to have your safeties crashing down. It was so frustrating to watch that keep happening over and over and over.
I feel like that kind of defensive game plan was like, oh, well, Shuck's not going to run. Tech's more of that passing offense, so we only need that one linebacker.
And, you might be onto something, because in the beginning of the broadcast, they mentioned how Tyler Shuck didn't have a designed run until overtime of the Wyoming game. And then we're sitting here tonight, and he has 22 designed runs. So it's very evident they had a game plan. And to be honest, offensively, they executed it for the most part. It was just a couple costly turnovers in reality.
Well, I feel like even so, like going to, the resiliency of the team, it's like we kind of seen that, like, okay, we need to get it in gear. Like, it's not cruise control anymore. It's a Power 5 squad. This ain't cruise control. And we can't be on cruise control like we were against Portland State.
I forgot about this. This was the opening kick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was.
They threw the penalty. I was like, well, this is not a good way to start the game. Yeah, I actually forgot about that, because I was at the very beginning of the game. I was like, oh my.
Well, and my question here is, how does this happen on the initial kickoff? This is one that you're running out this squad all week when you're running your ones on special team. So my question is, when you're having this all week, you're telling me nobody sat back and said, oh shit, there's 2 zeros out there. If this happens later in the game, I get it, because substitutions happen. We're constantly seeing special teams guys being swapped out, but the opening kickoff, yeah, that's kind of a head scratcher, to be honest.
Yeah,
well, even the broadcasters were saying that. It's like, how does that happen on the opening kickoff? In the middle of the game, third quarter, you can see that happening. But, opening play, how does that happen?
Yeah, because I was like, does Tysheen Johnson, I'm not sure of his actual number, but so I don't know if I'm guessing he was warming up, practicing in zero also, but why? And then, yeah, I don't know how. So that's just a mistake on the player / also the coach is not noticing.
Well, and to be honest, that's real. Like that penalty right there is really fitting of how Oregon played today. Just penalty-wise, it was just the stupid little things that kept adding up and adding up and adding up, and that is a prime example of what Raymond just mentioned of one of those dumbass penalties that happened.
It definitely set the tone for the rest of the day in the penalty world for us. I was like blown away that it was the opening kickoff play. Basically, I was like, wow.
Well, I mean, we go back the last couple of years. How many games have we had like this that were less than 1 score game, 1 or 2 point games that we could have won, but penalties for 100+ yards killed us?
Man, I feel like you're describing every Oregon game I've ever watched.
Right. Most of them.
Those ones, yeah, that's for sure. Well, I mean, do you think you do 124 yards and penalties for a lot of teams, that will kill them, especially when it comes. Yeah. I muted myself again accidentally. This thing is more sensitive than I thought it was, but that'll kill teams. And I mean, it literally almost did us in a way. I mean,
well, right. I mean, Tech turned the ball over 5 times compared to our 0. I mean, unless you count the turnover on downs, which, I'm talking fumbles, interceptions here. They turned it over 5 times, and just because of those penalties, they still should have won this game with 5 turnovers, and that shit's wild to me. That doesn't happen, and it's like, if I can go back to one thing, obviously there were a ton of issues, but if I can go back to one thing, I go back to those penalty yards. I can think of 3 drives alone that happened where there was penalties on third downs that happened, and the biggest being that 3rd and 18 pass interference. That shit is completely unacceptable.
You just take out the pass interference, and that's like an extra at least an extra couple of possessions probably Oregon would have had.
Well, and you take off that one pass interference, that's 6 points they don't have right there. And then we're talking about swinging the momentum completely once again, because once Tech scores, they're back in the game, and obviously, everything's honky-dory in the Tech world again. But if they don't score there, and you give yourself an opportunity to go down the field and put yourself up 3 scores, we're talking an entirely different game, and this could have been, maybe it was the blowout people were thinking of. It's just dominoes didn't fall that way, and Oregon decided they wanted to see a lot of laundry on the field today.
Well, I was about to say that too. That first PI on that 3rd and 18 is what led to that 7 points, to their first touchdown. That's how it led. That momentum swung. They got that first touchdown.
Yeah, it's those type of things, But it's one of those comments mentioned earlier. It's all completely avoidable shit. That's all stuff that can be fixed, and that's kind of why. I know the defense didn't look stellar, but I think, they kind of treat this game like I don't want to call it scrimmage week because every D1 opponent's still a D1 opponent, but it's Hawaii. You really get to hone in on what you want to work on this week going into Colorado because we know what we're going to see. And, that's an entirely different discussion we'll get into next week. But, there's definitely a lot of stuff that needs to be shored up on that defensive front this week.
And I know – was it – go ahead, Sean.
Well, and penalties are going to happen. We know that. It's football. But that many, we had 2 against Portland State. Maybe you average 4 to 6 a game, hypothetically. That's going to happen. But
still half the amount we got today.
Exactly.
It's which is still not good. If you look at usually the top 10 teams in penalties or penalty yardages per game on the after the year, that's still not good.
No, it's not. But I mean, even so, this game should have been Texas Tech. They should have won this game easily. This could have been that blowout, but the penalties are what shot us in the foot. The 3rd and longs are what shot us in the foot. Trying to run the ball on a 3rd and 8, and they know that we're going up the middle.
Yeah, some of the play calling they're going to look at, of course, and I think again that's compliment to Tech for what they wanted to do and what they expected, and their game planning. But we were at least equal in the sense of Chuck fumbling in the red zone, and then we went for a 4th down and didn't get it either. Because actually, I walked out to go grab a drink and came back in, and the score didn't change. And Oregon had the ball, and I looked at the guy next to the Raider next to me, and I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "We fumbled." I was like, "Oh."
Oh, the Jamal Hill fumble?
He was like, "We fumbled." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." But one of the things too, I think that still changed some of the game plan too of how this game not necessarily went, but some of the play calling or the decision making. And Stein did it last week against Portland State, and then they lined up for 2 the first touchdown today. Didn't do it. Then the second one they went for 2 and got it. And then Tech chased that 2-point, the next touchdown, and they didn't get it. So then it became that 1-point field goal game kind of between it. And I think that did change a little bit of the thought process because, I mean, 1 extra point is 1 extra point. That's why we had that weird 31-30 Tech score for a while, So it did make a difference. So at the end of the day, too, if Tech had gone down at the very end and got a touchdown, they still would have had to go for 2.
Right. Yeah, we knew at a minimum we were headed to OT, which, I felt a little better about, but it's it still didn't want to be in that point. And I know I thought it was funny. I know after the game, Dan Lanning had his little interview, and it's like, what were you thinking when Jeffrey Bassa picked that off? And he's like, the only thing I was thinking was go down, but he's like, I know there are a ton of people around the world who are happy he didn't, because obviously for the bettors out there, Oregon ended up covering the spread this week, a 6.5 or 6 whenever you jumped on the line. So I just thought that was funny, but definitely that last 20 seconds, just being an Oregon fan and with our shaky defense as it is, I was a little worried watching.
I mean, that Bassa interception too was like, I feel like he wanted that touchdown. Like he knew it was there. He wanted that. Like you seen that smile on his face after he scored it. So he wanted that touchdown. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whether Dan was saying go down or not, Bassa was going.
Oh yeah, and I mean, even just as a fan perspective, my initial thought was not grab it and go down right away either. I was obviously too busy just celebrating and just kind of taking in the moment as it was happening. But yeah, I'm sure he had a little bit of tunnel vision once he saw a wide open lane to the end zone. Defensive players, they don't get a chance to score very often. How do you say no?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong, Tony, with going for our fourth down. I didn't mind that. It was just, I think it was the series of play calling that led to that situation. Plus, when we're chasing points that much, I think sometimes, too, you have to take the points. Take the points.
And that's kind of where I was at during the game, seeing it from broadcast standpoint was, when we're in that, it's like, why are you doing this? Why not just have Camden come out when it would have been less than a 40-yard field goal at that point? And he can that's a chip shot for him. Like, in my head, but I also kind of understand where we were at. We wanted to put some more points on the board, kind of pad that lead at that point and not try to play from behind, because we knew if we tried to play from behind that it's possible that we wind up losing that game.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like a lot of that fourth down play, I feel like a lot of that was analytics in itself, understanding the risk versus rewards, odds there, going for it. So I really had no problem with going for it on fourth down there whatsoever, actually, just because, as we've seen, it works more often than not. Tech made a play. That's what they have a defense for. They did their jobs better than we did our jobs, and that's what it was.
Yeah, look, that's Lanning's nature. He is aggressive. I think he's learned to tone it down a little bit here and there, but he hasn't gotten into the situations again like some of those games that we saw last year. But that's just his nature. He's an aggressive guy, and that's fine. I like that type of play calling, especially when you have confidence. It was like Chip Kelly always had confidence in his players. Well, Dan Lanning has confidence in his guys too. Plus, it was like a short one. It wasn't even like a long 4th and 1 or something.
It was literally like 6 inches. It wasn't very much.
Yeah, it was a short one. It was like, yes, Tony. Before that that interception, I was really stressing out. That literally sucked the wind out of the Texas Tech Stadium. As soon as that pick happened and you saw him running to the end zone, people were like, "Oh no," because they really thought they were going to have this game.
Well, and Tony made a comment too about that. What was his name? Dunlap's almost interception. That one. But I was sitting here, like, no, that's incomplete. Like, even so, when he had full possession of the ball, he had a foot on the white. He was already going down, losing it. So it's like I knew that wasn't an interception at that point. Like, seeing replays, I knew it was an interception, whether those rules analysts came in and said, oh, no, that's an interception. Like, he had control. Whether or not, like, you can see that first foot is down on the white. His, left foot, I think it was up in the air at that point. So it's still hard to call, but seeing it from the top angle on the broadcast, you could really tell that was an incomplete pass at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it and I was like, because I when Nick's threw it, I thought he was just throwing it away, but he tried to get it, I think, to Ferguson, in the side of the end zone, and the guy made a great attempt at getting it. But even if he had his foot in bounds, which I'll even give him the credit he did, when he went down it fell out underneath him, so he didn't complete the possession. Plus, they called it incomplete on the field, so replay has to then be able to go, oh, So I get why they left it as is, but I think it was a good a good call to say pass incomplete on the field, anyways. Because looking at the replay, yeah, he bobbled it, and that's what Marty thinks too. He bobbled it. So,
well, once you zoom in on it, you can see that it's like dislodged right here in his arm. So you knew it was incomplete at that point, whether, he went to the bench screaming at a ref saying, no, I picked that. Like, whether you picked it or not, you picked it off in the end zone, you're starting at the 25. Like, it's not like you made a huge play, but you still made a play, whether it was incomplete or not.
yeah, it was still a great play by him and nice attempt. I mean, that's for sure. But I think that was the correct call. I mean, Derek, did you see something different? I mean,
nope, I'm with it. Looks like a clear-cut incompletion to me. Go Ducks.
very specific there. There was just so much to go. That's why I need to go back and watch the actual game, because there was just so much to try to take in. Plus, again, if you leave the stand to go down in the restaurant area or something, you're stuck down there for like 10, 20 minutes at least sometimes. So you miss maybe even like a drive. Like, I could have missed like a couple things where I would have a couple more real takeaways. What's one other area? Like special teams, we punted, I believe, twice, and we had one partial blocked. Yeah. That was an issue, because I saw them bull rush coming for it, and I'm like, oh no. And then they caught it, and I'm like, oh god.
But right after that, that's when Tysheem Johnson or Jackson or whatever picked it off from Chuck in the red zone. So it wasn't like it was that big of a deal at the partial block. But, in my eyes too, it's like whether he jumped or the up man was pushing him up. Like,
oh no,
I couldn't really tell.
Straight bull rush through our line. Our line was not prepared for that type of rush, it looked like. But that was correct, yes. Immediately after that, Chuck threw the pick. And I was like, oh, it didn't do anything. I was like, okay. But that's a concern, because that's another good way to lose the game, is give them a short field.
Yeah, let's hope it's an isolated event and not doesn't become a trend. I mean, hopefully we don't see the punt team a lot in general this season, but when it does need to happen, it'd be nice if that unit was shored up.
I mean, really, out of both of them, like, the first punt was a boomer. Like, even so, our punter has a leg on him, so it's not really something that I worry about if we got a punt, because he can punt that a good probably 60 yards if he needs to.
Yeah, and to be fair, the Gunners get downfield extremely quickly. They covered their punts, the ones that they did have, effectively. But, yeah, unacceptable to have a blocked punt.
I would say kind of kickoff too. There from the back of the end zone, not having somebody there for, he got what did they say, 33, 34 yards from the back of the end zone, maybe more if you count from the back of the end zone. Mm-hmm. Like, can shore that up a little bit.
I think people were more surprised he actually brought it out.
I mean, I was.
He'd been kicking that thing out of the end zone most of the day, out of the back of the end zone. Like, people were like, dang, he's trying to kick that thing into the library. Like, but there was the other one too. We did one of the punts. Maybe it was a third. Was there 2 punts or 3? I'm trying to remember. I think maybe it was 3.
I think there was 2.
2? Okay. I think even on the first one, we got another penalty because we had 5 guys off the line, not an illegal formation, and they got a decent return off of it. And we have another penalty on that on special teams though for like alignment or something, as if I recall correctly. Again, just another dumb penalty, another really dumb, simple procedural alignment penalty where guys just didn't line up correctly. And
yeah, the illegal substitutions, the illegal formations. How many times? I mean, I think we saw 3, 4 of them. That's uncharacteristic.
I think at least 3 illegal formations and then the 1 illegal substitution.
Something along the lines of that. After a while, it was hard to keep track of in my mind. There just started to be so many of them.
We got 14 to work through.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, though, that's the biggest thing, is shoring up those dumb little penalties, making sure your squad's ready to go. Not, okay, here's this penalty, here's this penalty. Like,
yeah, it was this question from Raymond a little earlier. It's like, was this a letdown game from a stellar performance at Portland State, or did the Ducks think out loud on the road? That's a fair question. It's Texas. We have not done good in Texas the last few years, or in desert situations. We just haven't. I don't think it was a letdown after Portland State. I mean, that's Portland State. Like we said, we can't take too much away from that. And I think this is more just Tech wanting it that badly.
Really, I think
we should have too. And obviously, at the end of the day, we got it. But
yeah, I wouldn't say this is a letdown by any mean. I mean, I think a letdown would be if this score were flip flopped and we're looking at an 8-point loss here. You know, at the end of the day, we got a dub and we covered the Vegas spread. So we made money this week too off of it. So I wouldn't call it a letdown. Like you said, Ben, I think it was just a product of Texas Tech being ready for this game, having this one circled on their calendar and ready to go. And, they came out firing.
yeah, I don't think it's a letdown either. Like, it would have really been a letdown, say this was, 31-30 game instead of 38-30. Like, I think at that point, that's a letdown game, whether we won or not. Like, I think that's a letdown game, But, yes, we haven't played well in Texas. I will say this, at University of Arizona, we've played well. We played well there last year. Arizona State, that's a different story. But, I don't think this is a letdown. I think, yes, we all really have some negativity towards this game. But I do think Texas Tech was definitely a little bit more prepared than we were.
I think that's exactly it. Like this, Tech gave it their all, and they were coming in again. Now going, this was the game they'd probably been looking forward to. Whether they overlooked Wyoming a little bit, again, you can read into that all you want. But they were like, well, we either win this one or we start the season 0-2. There's a big difference between being 1-1 and 0-2, because 0-2, you might already get deflated for the season. But they still have the Big 12 in front of them, too. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, it's, again, I need to go back and look at the actual tape. And I need to pull something up here quickly. And so that's all I was going to say. Is there any other big takeaways that you guys noticed, either from playing players, the coaches, because I noticed, especially on the sideline a lot, like after Lupoy had his little meltdown almost on the sideline with the D-line, which he had several times during the game, but the really bad one. Even Hill pulled a team, like a player-only meeting on the sideline, was screaming at everyone. Like he got up on a bench with everyone around him, and he was screaming at them. Probably like 10 minutes into the 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Mm. But, basically, do the damn job, And that's it. I need to go back and look, too, to see who was making the mistakes. But I was like, okay, now what player is going? Okay, this is This is not what we're meant to be doing. This is not good enough.
It's nice to see that our players are holding each other accountable. It's one thing if it's Coach Lanning or Tosh that's getting in somebody's face, but it's nice to see one of our own players, kind of acting like a captain out there, holding everybody accountable. So, I mean, to be honest, in terms of a takeaway, I guess my biggest takeaway is we learned that this team's not a quitter. We've seen some Oregon teams in the past where they would have gotten down in a tough environment on the road and probably would have laid down a little bit at the end, but it was kind of nice to see that they kept fighting in all three phases of the game throughout the fourth quarter and, when they were down by 2 scores at one point. So very excited to know that this team has a little bit of resiliency behind them.
Yeah, I mean, resiliency is a takeaway for me too. I do feel like, the coaching, you can see that, okay, these coaches are fired up. Like, they know what we have. They know what we can do. They see the trying to think of the word. They see what the players can do, and they will want more out of it. Or even, in between plays, even on the broadcast, you could see some of the guys, hey, do this. Like, you can kind of tell from their just body language, their hand signals of like, you need to be doing this, do this, go, doing this or this, like trying to tell them like, come on and get your shit together, essentially. But I also feel like, a takeaway too would be that, like, Bryce Botcher again. Obviously, we didn't see him much again after the second half. He wasn't much of a factor. But in that first half, he lit it up again. Like, that's a big player takeaway right there. I feel like he may not be a starting linebacker right now, but he's definitely earning his snaps. He's earning every single one he's getting. And he's taking every opportunity he's getting on the field, and he's making the most of it.
Yeah, he was rotating in and out. I noticed him when he was running on the field a lot, and that's one of those. That's why it's interesting to watch those. When you see the broadcast compared to like what you watch at the stadium, because the broadcast probably is not going to show Lupoy tearing into the guys too much, or show Hill getting up and talking to the team and going, fix this, they're not going to show that, so you don't see it necessarily from the broadcast standpoint. So I thought it was just kind of interesting because it was, for a little bit there, again, it looked dire. I was getting pretty nervous there for a good about 5 or 6 minutes in the fourth. I was like, oh boy. Or even before Tech fumbled, I was like, oh no, they're going to go up like 2 scores on us, and it's going to be a world of hurt to come back from it. I am working on it. So anything else? I'm working on putting up something for you guys really quickly. I'm just trying not to mess it up. But yeah, anything else that you guys really took away from this sloppy, painful kind of to watch win? A win is a win.
A win's a win, and that's the thing. I think, you go to social media right now, and you're going to see a lot of people tearing apart the Ducks for their performance today. Saying, oh, you only beat a Tech team by 8 at home. And to be honest, I don't know, man. I'm pretty excited with an 8-point victory today going into Tech. I think everybody and their mom knew this was going to be a dogfight throughout the game. If you really thought this was going to be a big blowout, you probably weren't looking into the game super deep. But, it was great.
Well, and I'm with you there. Like, I feel like people are going to look at this and be like, oh, well, Oregon's just dog crap. Like, Colorado's the best. Colorado and USC are the best teams in the Pac-12 right now. But it's like, would you rather have these mistakes in week 2 or down the last stretch of 2 or 3 games and shoot yourself in the foot at possibly a chance at the playoff or a New Year's Six game?
You'd rather get them out of the way now, especially if you can get the win. Now, what has happened in the past, I think we could all agree is, and with other teams, not just Oregon, is that you may get a win and it can be a bad win like that. Now the point is, do they learn from it and change it, or does it just continue? Because they're like, well, we won that game, so it doesn't matter. I think that's the challenge for the coaches and the senior players is to say, this is not acceptable, and we have to fix this because this is going to kill us. Eventually, this is going to catch up to us, and it's not going to be pretty.
Well, I feel like we'll see that next week, too, come Hawaii. We'll see whether they've decided to fix it or whether it was just a win's a win. But something, too, I've always said is, like, just because a team like this may be unranked, doesn't mean that they're not going to come in and give you everything they have to try and upset you. Give you every last little ounce of energy and every last big hit that they have, just because they're unranked and just because on paper this should be a blowout. I feel like you look at
Texas Tech is a bad team. That's it. We don't know what they are because there's only 2 games. Even for a lot of teams, 2 games doesn't tell you what a team actually is.
Colorado.
Well,
but I feel like you look at the Bama and Texas game too. Like that game was super close, almost the whole game. But then Texas started to open it up. It's 2 games. Bama loses 1. You don't know how they're going to look. This is 1 bad game for us. Going down the stretch, is that how we're really going to look the rest of the season? Probably not.
Well, my thing is, I can't think of a game, and you know how I know there's not a game is we've never been undefeated. I can't think of a game where we haven't had a sloppy victory in a season. You know what I mean? Especially playing in the Pac and going to places like Pullman, Washington, and Tempe, Arizona for a late night game in the desert on a Thursday. You just never know what's going to happen in some of these places. So, I think we've kind of come to appreciate a sloppy win. And like we said, at this point, a win's a win, and we get to fight into next week going 2-0, which is a big difference between, 2-0 and 1-1.
Well, I mean, you go back to the playoff we were in where we beat Florida State and got absolutely outmatched by Ohio State. That year, the Stanford game was sloppy as hell.
The Arizona game was sloppy that year too.
There were at least 3 or 4 sloppy games like this in that national championship berth that year. Yeah,
so I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing that we have a sloppy victory. The players got a taste of what it's like to try to come back in and show that adversity, show that they're not out here to quit. I'm happy. I don't think any of us expected Oregon to go 12-0 this season and not have any sloppy victories. We knew this was going to happen, and this was a prime candidate game for it to happen, and it happened to work out this way.
Like you said, like everyone will say, every team has not necessarily even a sloppy game or a bad game, but they get some good breaks here and there. Every team has to have some lucky bounces go their way to be able to win, a lot of games. I mean, it's just kind of how it goes. So there's a lot of stuff, Texas Tech fans were like, well, that's it's like, well, that's what happens. I mean, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. And thinking of winners, because I went back and looked, and again, I knew one person wasn't winning. Our score predictions.
One of us.
It definitely wasn't going to be Spaz. It definitely wasn't going to be Sean after that score. It definitely came down to you and me. But unfortunately, I went with a little higher end on mine. and you got one score correct, perfectly correct, and closer offensive score. So the winner for this week is now Derek. Derek is the reigning, well, I won't say reigning champion. You're tied with Spaz at 1 point each. I actually thought walking back, I didn't look at the numbers right off the top of my head. I couldn't remember them. I was like, ooh, we might have to split this because I thought maybe you said 45. I said 40 or something like that. I was like, oh, we might have to split this. But no, you are the outright winner this week for the correct scores.
What can I say, man? We can't let Spaz stay in first place, all right? I'm coming for it.
Yeah.
Hey,
no.
he's up in the clouds sometimes, all right? I might be a little bit too, but at least I was kind of a little realistic.
Well, I will say we all did think Tech would at least score 24 to 30 points. So we were all pretty much on board with like, no, they're gonna put up points on us. That wasn't. It was just the way that they did do it by the penalties. That's literally, yeah. If it hadn't been for all the penalties, the continued drives, and allowed them to score, really, it could have been a lot less. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And yeah, exactly. That was my takeaway. I think we learned more from a close game compared to a blowout win, and we won't be taking anyone lightly. Exactly. And the team didn't give up. They fought. They made adjustments. You saw the coaching staff get on. Saw Hill get on his own defensive guys, and I think that's good. That's culture building. That's character building. And now they know what it's like to be in a dogfight. Because yeah, a lot of times teams just go through their non-con schedule, blow everyone out, whatever, and then they get into their conference and go, uh-oh.
So it's easy to mask your holes against some of these non-conference opponents that ourselves as Oregon Ducks and some other of our conference foes have played, like a Portland State. It's really easy to cover up some of your holes there, but then you get to a Tech game and you think, oh shit, we got some problems. And I think, kind of like you mentioned, there are going to be some teams who are going to hit conference play and have a harsh reality check, I think.
USC.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to have a lot of dogfights this year. Getting this one out the way, our team's going to know what it is and what it feels like, and is going to be able to perform a lot better in more of these dogfights come conference play.
I think it was helpful to get this out of the way, especially being on the road too. So it's not like you were just doing this at home in front of your crowd. You were doing it on the road in their environment, and not even like we went to Boise State or something like that, where it was a close drive or where, you're talking all the way to Texas. I mean, it's not exactly nearby to go to,
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the Duck fans showed up, pretty well as they usually do. So I thought it was a great environment. Obviously, Tech is rowdy, but I thought the Duck fans, especially in the fourth quarter, all I could hear were the Duck fans trying to screw with Texas Tech's offense at that point. They were just screaming, defense and like trying to make it as noisy as possible for Tech. So I thought it was a good showing. And then even at the end of the game, afterwards, as we were celebrating, I put a short up on our channel of like the final play, or they batted the ball down in the end zone on the Hail Mary, and then showed the scoreboard, and then you can hear all the Oregon fans around me just cheering and stuff. Well, the Oregon media guy came up and was like, hey, keep it up, keep it for the video. And then the players came over and were like, yeah, on the bench finally they came over and were like, a little bit before they, cleared off after they shook Texas Tech fans, of course, and stuff, and then before they started clearing the field. So I thought that was pretty cool. The Oregon players always seem to go and recognize, especially when you travel. A lot of people travel that fall or finally get to go to a game because it's at least closer than going all the way to Eugene. So it's always nice to see.
Well, even in Arizona, too, last year, they were, after the win, going back to the locker room. They stopped on the sideline, made sure to visit fans, everything. So, when we travel, they always make sure that fans are taken care of and know that they appreciate us showing out for us out-of-staters who can't be at Autzen.
Yeah, and the one thing with Tech, it's a little different sometimes than you see at some of the other venues too. Is they have because I was in the 9th row, right there behind the bench. They have a like 25 foot gap between the wall and the players, like it's fenced off.
Oh,
it's like a tunnel way that the mascots and some cheerleaders walk through and stuff like that, and so it's separate even further, so the players aren't like right there or able to come up to the wall.
okay.
Now they can go to like the corner of the end zone and do that, but like that sideline they have this fence space, so they're at like a distance. And now that could be because it's just the visitor side because of the tortillas. I'm not sure. I wouldn't doubt it because yeah,
you never know.
I will say I was extremely impressed that people could throw a tortilla that far. I didn't know that you could actually frisbee that thing that far. I was impressed.
Well, some of them were making it to like the middle of the field, albeit at like the 20-yard line, but like they were getting like 30, 40 yards from the stands out there. That was madly impressive.
Oh yeah, because that was not just coming from a guy at the wall. That was coming from like 10, 12 rows deep in the stands. I was like,
even to the middle of the end zone from probably the second level. Like, how you do that?
Yeah, I will say that I don't know if that's an actual skill or something you can,
Maybe we ought to learn then.
I didn't get hit with the tortilla, so that was good. Sam did. Someone tossed one back like 4 rows down, and it just pelted him right in the chest. I was like, and you just got hit with a tortilla.
So what you're saying is Sam got the full experience then.
But no, I will say, props to the Tech fans because again, of course, they were rowdy, especially the student section, and just being kind of obnoxious at times. But until the pick six, when they actually started throwing water bottles, like there was about 4 or 5 water bottles specifically I saw thrown. Mm-hmm. They behaved pretty well, With the tortillas, that's kind of their policy, so they can do that if they want. I mean. But it was the water ball thing. That's when I was like, okay, that's a little much now. Come on. But other than that, pretty good environment, especially for the first time being in Tech. And in that type of game, obviously, they had a lot on the line, and they were all sure that they were going to take the Ducks down, and they didn't. And no, Colin, no frozen tortillas. Yeah, they don't allow frozen things into the stadium. Like if you bring it, if it's frozen, you can't bring it in because they don't want projectiles. But it's funny, if you buy a bottle of water, a couple of them are like frozen because they've been sitting on ice for so long.
Yeah.
So at the same time, I'm like, but I guess they figure it'll just melt anyway. So, but yeah, no frozen tortillas. But. Well, congratulations, Derek. You are now tied with Spaz, 1 point each for your.
Come on.
I can't wait for the score predictions for Hawaii. I have a feeling we're going to go off the wall again.
I think we're going to be all over the place.
I don't know what to expect. I have to go watch Hawaii's highlights from their other games. Again, both of them, Stanford and did they play today?
I don't know if they played today or not.
They might have had one of their bye weeks because the week 0 they get 2 bye weeks. So I think that they might have had a bye week, or they played someone. Nobody. I have no idea. I didn't see anything about Hawaii today, so I'll have to go back and check. Again, I have to watch all the highlights and updates for today. I've seen a couple, but I haven't. I need to look into them.
Well, so I did find Hawaii. They're currently playing right now, actually. They are in an absolute dogfight with the University of Albany right now. So, I'm being dead ass serious.
The University of Albany from New York.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the University of Albany, the only reason I know it is it's a basketball school, but it's in New York. And I believe their mascot's like the Great Indians. So, Yeah,
Talk about a trip. Jesus.
but yes, currently Hawaii isn't in a dogfight.
What's the score on that then?
It is 24-20 Hawaii, with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter.
Jeez.
So,
These
yeah.
score predictions are going to be off the wall. Like,
Yeah, interesting. We'll see. That's next week, so we're gonna have to see how this one goes. But we survived the weekend this weekend because for again a good 5 to 6 minutes there, I really didn't think we were gonna survive.
No, I'm so looking forward to just like laying down in bed tonight and scrolling social media and looking at all the sad Texas Tech tweets. Very much looking forward to it. I read and heard so much shit this week from the Tech fans on Twitter, so I'm very much looking forward to soaking in their sorrows.
You'd be nice. You two be nice over there.
I won't say nothing. I'm just, I might go to bed with a smile tonight.
I mean, I did stop in a gas station because I had to walk back again, like literally like 5 miles, which is not like a lot, but it's just like it's gonna take a while. And I went to a gas station just to buy a couple drink things to bring back, and one guy was in there and he was like, "I don't like Oregon. Don't serve this guy." And then like 5 more Oregon people walked in. And he was like, "Don't serve any of these people." Just throwing a little hissy fit.
Oh, buddy, he'll be okay. I'm sure they get to play like Sam Houston State next week or something like that. So
Oh no, Tarleton State.
Oh God, God, that's gonna be a tough one. An absolute slugfest.
you're going to lose that game too. You're going to start 0-3. Like,
Oh God.
I'll tell you what.
They
If
had a
Texas
segment.
does lose to Tarleton next week, we might have the worst defense in the country. That's all I'm saying. So
They had a segment. They had a segment last night, or technically it was last night now, about lost fans, or lost fan in the stadium, and they highlighted. I was like, a lost fan in the stadium? What the hell? And then they highlighted this guy in the in the nosebleed section in a Tarleton University shirt, and they're like, I don't know where this guy's coming from, but that's next week. I think you're confused. Come back next week, sir. And he was just up there like.
I mean, you guys are living in Texas. Do you know, is Tarleton in Texas?
I have no idea.
Someone Google that really quickly. I think it is, but I have no idea, to be honest. I've heard of it, but I don't know if it's in Texas. Tarleton.
Tarleton State University.
Tarleton State. So it's in Stevensville, Texas. Do you know where Stephenville is?
I have no idea.
Come on, Texas boys. What are we doing here?
Stevensville. I've heard of it again, but I'm not sure where it is. I think it's in the east.
So Stevensville is just southwest of Dallas. It looks like it's about equal distance between Dallas and Waco.
I probably drove through it then, coming from Marshall to Colleen, so.
Yeah, so that man, he was actually lost. You don't just stumble upon Lubbock from Stephenville, Texas. So I don't know what the hell that guy was doing.
It was just funny. It was because I was like, is there actually someone lost in the stadium? And it was like, no, just one random guy in a purple shirt. And they zoomed all the way in on him, and he was in like the back deep high corner. It was like, I was like, what the hell?
Hey, you got to respect the dedication.
He's just trying to hide out, okay?
Did Mark Helfrich do the commentary?
Yeah, he did.
God, yes. It was annoying as hell.
Was that weird?
It was weird.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I was so just like flustered throughout the game that I really wasn't too into the commentary throughout it. I was busy throwing a tissy fit off to the side, but I don't know. Health is okay.
But between the two, you couldn't really tell whose voice was who, to be honest. Like, if you actually paid attention to the commentary, both of them kind of sounded about the same.
Yeah, see, that's why I want to go back and watch the broadcast, because I was like, when you guys said that, I was like, oh no. I mean, because I was always kind of weird. The first time I think I ever heard him do the Oregon game was 2020 championship game against USC. I think that was the first time I ever heard him do an Oregon game. And obviously he has insight into the game. He's not exactly the most polished speaker either. He's not like the most polished announcer. So whenever I hear him, I was like, oh, Mark.
He's a knowledgeable dude on air, but it's just kind of weird when you see his like picture pop up on the screen, when he's talking, and it's like brings back the memes of getting slapped in the national championship by Ohio State. Good times.
Or TCU.
I love the pain, Ben. I love it.
I lost $50 that day.
I lost like 5 years of my life.
Thank you, Helfrich. I lost like 5 years of my life and $50. Okay.
Don't talk about it. If I wanted you to want to talk about pain, I was working in Africa as rotation, and it was like, I think we had a day off. I think it was when the TCU Alamo Bowl happened, and I think I'd been out doing something, and everyone's like, dude, you got to watch that game. It was so good. And I was like, really? Okay. Because I wanted to go back and look. So I pulled it up later on and I was watching. I'm like, halftime came. I'm like, what do they mean this is a good game? It's a blowout. And I was like, oh no, don't you dare tell me.
I think it's
don't you dare tell me.
And what?
I think his name was Bram Kohlhausen, the quarterback. Remember, he came in at halftime and just fucking lit up the Duck defense for.
Has anyone ever heard his name since?
Yo.
Exactly. That's how really painful it was. It wasn't like Patrick Mahomes came in and started all of a sudden tearing it up against the Ducks. I'd be like, but we also lost Vernon Adams, so that was the big thing.
When Jeff Locke has more fumbles than he does pass completions, but hey, that's neither here nor there.
I love Locke. He was one of those guys that stuck around.
I respectfully disagree. As a person, I'm sure he's wonderful, and I'm sure he's done some great things in life outside of football. But unfortunately, I only know him as a football player, and I'm not a fan.
Oh yeah, that Utah game.
I turned. This is one of the few times I turned the game off. I was like, I can't watch anymore. I actually turned it off like late third quarter. I was like, I'm done. I can't even finish it. It was
the
Washington game. I just couldn't. I could not finish those games. It was so painful.
I forget what the quarterback was at the time for UW, but I can still picture the picture where he's like pointing at the Oregon linebacker. Oh my God, man, that was awful.
Browning.
Yeah, Jake Browning.
Jake Browning. There we go. The defeat Cobra the very next year. Yeah, that was tough.
That Utah game was what made me like rip my old jersey. I was so pissed. I was throwing a temper tantrum.
Locke and Burmeister, the worst quarterbacks I've seen in Oregon.
Burmeister, yes. I mean, obviously he got Mark Helfrich fired, but then we found out Herbert's good. So I guess at the same time he did some good.
It was really a blessing in disguise if you think about it. Now Jeff Locke, on the other hand, he just lost as an Alamo Bowl, man, and it's just an Alamo Bowl, but I wanted it. That's bullshit.
Hey, a bowl win's a bowl win too. Like, we still want that.
I was a little surprised tonight too. Who's our fourth quarterback? What's his name? It's one of the unknown guys, I think. Who's the fourth ranked quarterback in our?
I don't even know if they had a 4 listed.
They may not have, because I know I saw obviously Thompson. And I know I saw Novastad there.
All I saw on the list was Thompson and Novastad after Bo.
Okay, yeah, I saw them on the sideline, but
yeah, they didn't even have Austin Novastad listed as a option on the roster tonight.
he was there. He was suited up. He was on the sideline. with everyone. Same with running back. We didn't see him.
Either of the young boys.
Sadiq or whatever, the fourth string running back, I think. Sadiq.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we saw Dante Dowdell or Jaden Lamar tonight either.
I don't think so.
Huh. Yeah, I'm just realizing that right now.
We didn't see Casper tonight.
Young Casper.
Even
Casper
though he was
he was padded. He was suited up on the sideline again. He threw a tortilla back at the student section.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
He was on the list, but we didn't see him. Trying to think of who else. Somebody I had mentioned in text was Jurian Dickey. I don't know where he's at.
I have a strong feeling, especially given the depth this year, we're probably going to see a red shirt happen out of that man.
That's what I'm kind of thinking is, are we redshirting him? Like, are we saving him for, like, different games? Because he's got 3 more games to keep his red shirt.
Right, and I think they get a bowl game for free, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
That doesn't count against your red shirt. But, yeah, we'll probably see him next week. Probably, second half we'll start seeing him rolling out there. But, yeah, once we head into conference play, I guess I'm not really sure what his role is going to look like throughout the season.
It was hard to keep track of all the different players I saw on the sideline. So it was like, but yeah, that's it. They used James a lot more tonight than I thought they would in different scenarios.
Well, I feel like with Whittingham only getting into his first game so far, like James being there last week, like you kind of got to get Whittingham a little warmed up too and kind of go from there. Because Bucky was warmed up.
Yeah, now that I'm kind of like looking back at the game, something that surprises me a little bit, Gary Bryant Jr. and Trayshawn Holden combined had 2 catches for 31 yards. That really kind of surprises me, especially given that Bo passed for near 360 tonight.
Well, and they were both open a few times, kind of like how Ben was saying that, like, Bo just kind of threw it to Tez or Troy. Like, Bryant and Trayshawn were open. It was just a matter of Bo was trying to get it to Troy or get it to Tez.
Right. I mean, yeah, just looking back at it, it's very evident how much our running backs were used in the pass game tonight. Bucky Irving had 7 receptions. Whittington had 6. Jordan James even had 2. So, I mean, yeah, we were seeing a lot of wealth distributed to the running backs out of the backfield in the pass game.
Yes, and I think, again, a lot of that was some of the coverage, but then Bo missed some of the open one. But then it did seem like he tried to force it to Tez and Franklin a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to see that in the film. They're going to go, hey, Bryant's right there in the middle of the field.
Yeah, just in terms of targets, he targeted Troy 9 times. He targeted Trayshawn and Gary Bryant 4 combined. And then Kenyon Sadiq did not record a stat tonight.
Yeah, I was like, I know he's on the sideline, but he was always on the sideline. I don't think I saw him even go in the game at all that I'm aware of. He might have gone in, but I don't think he did anything.
No, because I don't even think we saw much of Casey Kelly tonight, the tight end transfer from Ole Miss.
Yeah, no, it was just Herbert caught 2 or 3 passes, and then Ferguson had 4 or 5 catches, I think. He might have
T-Ferg had 2 and Patty had 3. So, I mean, our tight ends, they were pretty ineffective throughout the game as well. I mean, Terrence Ferguson, he had a big catch and run a little later in the game, so I guess I can't really say that.
Yeah, that was a Bo Nix rolling out, and they almost got to him, and then he kind of dumped it over on the sideline to him, and then he turned up and got a nice one. And Herbert had one pretty decent one. But, yeah, I mean, that's it. There's so many different players that aren't even being utilized yet. And for what reason? Because the depth is just there. So it's like, I mean.
Can't forget about Herbert throwing that 2-point conversion, though.
See, I got to watch that. That was on the other side of the field, so it was hard for me to watch. I couldn't see that part. I was like,
Well, to be honest, it even fooled the cameraman on the live version. So when we were watching the play live, what had happened is they were panned in on the center exchange, and then the play was going on, but the cameraman didn't pan off the center. So then all of a sudden they tried to swap over to the left hash really quick, but by that time the ball was already in the end zone. So the commentators are reacting to that. The camera guy is showing nothing that's happening through the commentators, and we didn't get to see the play live. So obviously they went back and showed us the different angles and such of how it worked out, but yeah, I had no idea what had happened originally. They just said, I heard Patrick Herbert with the completion, and I'm like, what do you mean the completion?
Yeah, I love when the camera guy gets fooled. That happens too. That's not an easy job. That's not an easy job because he's trying to watch everything, zoom in, and keep track of where the ball is. And once in a while it happens where he's like, God damn it.
Yeah, if you catch the camera guy sleeping, odds are you're catching someone on the defense sleeping.
Yeah, that's why I've got to go back and rewatch the entire thing because there was a bunch of stuff I'm sure I missed, but I think at this point in time, our key takeaways are: give me 3 key takeaways from this game, both of you, 3 of them. They can be the same thing, even they can cover down on each other. It's fine. What are 3 key things that you take away from this game, good or bad?
Penalties.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Penalties, cornerback play, and Bo's legs. That ankle, seeing that it's healthy.
That's fair. I like that. My key takeaways: 1, the resiliency. 2, the D-line is able to get pressure. And 3 is, once again, the resiliency. That's the one thing that I'm just so happy that's a trait that I see in this team this year. They were really able to fight back and never back down. Even when you're heading into the fourth quarter down a couple scores, really nice to see.
I would definitely say yes. The D-line can get pressure if they get fired up enough for it, at least. Let's put it that way. The O-line actually does hold up pretty well. It could be better, but at least they hold it pretty well. But again, yes, obviously penalties. I think that's the biggest glaring issue. I mean that was what kept this game close in an uncomfortable manner. I mean, well, all right, gentlemen. I think that we have more than covered enough and extra stuff. It's even extra stuff. We even went back in history a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
Talk about painful moments.
Too painful.
So once again, congratulations, one, for obviously Oregon getting out of the desert alive in Lubbock. And obviously for everyone for being patient as we had, some of us had some technical issues, and then I had to walk back from the stadium, which was not planned at all. That was definitely not the plan. So hopefully we don't have this happen again. But that's on me. So I appreciate everyone who came in and watched because, it's not how we like to do things around here. So Derek, I guess, start with you quickly. And where can people find you? They can follow you, promote yourself, your socials, all that stuff.
Yeah, let me pin it up in the comments for everybody. But
I need to. If I was on my normal setup, I would have a copy paste thing now, and I would just do it myself. But I'm not on my normal setup.
Yeah, no problem. So for everybody who is interested, my social media, I'm mainly active on Twitter. You can follow me at Wait Who's Derek on Twitter.
And I'm mainly active on Facebook, so I'll shout that out. My name's Sean Howard on there, so feel free to look me up and add me if you want to.
And I'm just me. Ben of Exploring with Ben and Sam, at Exploring with Ben on Twitter, and then just the Exploring with Ben and Sam here on YouTube. You can check us out there for by all means, as well as you can check out the three of us, as well as Spaz, who is little vacation weekend and not having good connection right now. So that's why he's not here. He jumped in and out a couple times. You can check us out here every week for the live post game. Hopefully more on time than tonight. Unless something just disastrous absolutely happens or something like that. But you can also then catch us every Tuesday night right here on the Ducks channel for the Oregon Live weekly show at 9 p.m. Central, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern, for those of you who are not too good with time zones. It confuses me too. I have to make sure everyone's very specific on what time zone they're talking about. And then tomorrow night, tonight on Sunday, you can check me out specifically on the main channel for the Voice of College Football for the College Football After Dark show, after I catch up on most of the games that I did not get to enjoy today, because I heard there were a few little surprises.
Very good week in college football this week.
Apparently Texas is back. That might be the title of the show. Who knows?
Hook 'em horns, right?
Oh, the amount of horns down shirts too at the Tech game. Greatness.
Texas will never be back.
I don't think so. Well, once again, everyone, we thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification. You'll see us. And again, join us on Tuesday for the weekly show where we'll kind of recap this game a little bit, and then we'll start looking at Hawaii. The mighty Fighting Rainbow Warriors. Or are they just the Warriors now? Did they get rid of Rainbow?
I'm pretty sure they're back with the Rainbow Warriors. I know they removed the name for a couple of years, but I'm pretty sure we're back.
Oh, okay. I was like, I remember something about that. I was like, I know them as the Rainbow Warriors. So I was like,
that's what we're rocking with.
That's what we're doing.
I'm good with that. If people have a problem with it, let us know in the comments below. Hey, and also, yeah, I should have said this at the beginning of the video too. Anyone watching, if they get through this whole video, what did you guys think of the Tech game? Both sides, Texas or for Oregon. Let us know in the comments. But as of for now, we appreciate you guys, and we will see you coming this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central again for the Oregon show, and then next week for the post-game show. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Sean, as usual, and Spaz somewhere out there in the netherworld, just floating around somewhere. Have a good night, everyone.